I see our town council members are here. Sit down, be quiet, let's get the meeting back on. I want to go home, come on. We all want to go home. And I still got another item on the agenda. Okay. Quiet. All right, Mark, make your comment.
Okay,
And then I want to move on.
don't be giving out my name just in case it's a stupid comment.
There was one gentleman that was actually at the mic here. When.
Go ahead, I'll be next,
As
yeah,
long as he
no worries.
didn't-
Mark, absolutely, go ahead.
Mark, do your comment. Do your comment.
Y'all yell at me, sorry. My comment was, I just was.
Say your
curious.
name, full name for the record.
Mark Ingersoll.
Thank
You want me to spell it?
No.
What I'm curious is if we do become members of the Washington County Conservancy District, we're still, I would think, gonna have some limitation on water connection. And I'm curious as to, do we know anything? I mean, they're talking about moratoriums and everything else, and I'm not opposed to it. I'm just curious as to how that will work versus our 300 connections that we have. Do we have any input from the, I mean, any idea as to what our limitations would be with them, if any? That's my question.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Wait, sorry, sir.
No worries.
I have some others that I wanted to answer, but I'll try to.
Justin Christensen, I have 12 acres on Pocketville Road that we've been working on. Development since November 2021. Our intention was to do a short-term overlay. We've been going through the motions,
How many units for your thing?
12 development. So
All
we've
right,
been
thanks.
going through the motions, for over a year now. Have met with Gene, the old mayor, got instructed on, the process, how to do it. And, every time we get closer, the target changes. And it feels like the town is motivated to make this really difficult for developers to get anything done, move the target along the way. And it seems odd to me that if you met with the Conservancy District in June, that you're bringing this up now.
No, I met with them on December 21st. The
But earlier
meeting
you
in
said you
June
met
was
with them in June,
Yes, that's something different.
but you were aware that there was 300 connections in June.
Yes,
So it seems odd to me that you're bringing this up now when we are at the stage to get approval for our developments. We were approved by planning and zoning for our short-term overlay in December. On the 12th meeting, we were promised to be on the schedule for council for the vote. The following, for the December meeting, I have that in an email from Crystal that we were on there. And so now all of this just feels like very politically motivated and targeted towards our developments to slow them down and eventually change the code so we cannot do these. So I'm definitely against this, and I feel like ethically, the city is just moving in the wrong direction. That's all I have to say.
Caleb Spenlove. A resident reached out to me, they weren't able to attend, and said that this moratorium is about water. Then it would read no more water connections would be sold. It does not say that, it says no building, construction zone changes, etc. I also think that we need to decide whether developers are crafty, manipulative, sneaky Moriartys that are trying to outplay us at every turn, or that they're not very smart and they're gonna, lose millions of dollars. We need to decide one or the other, because either they're really smart and they're like, oh, we're gonna go in and buy all the things on Monday, or they're not, and they're like, oh, we're gonna do all this work to find out, oh yeah, there's only 100 left now. I don't think it's secret how many water connections have, and I would assume the city has an individual who is assisting these developers and saying, okay, you wanna be doing this with this and this and that, well, these are your limitations in terms of zoning ordinances, blah, 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 water connections. The gentleman before mentioned that we know at any one time how many connections are left. And to say that somebody's gonna sneak in on Monday and buy them all up, I think is just outlandish, because they would have done so back in June or in December, or it would have happened at any point. So to be realistic and to halt these things would be unethical, as mentioned by the individual before, that our towns, it's flip-flopping between one or the others, and it's just gonna hurt us in the long run. Thank you.
okay. How many people are still in line?
My name is Matt Eakins, legal counsel, and I will keep it brief and concise.
Thank you.
As we're all members of the community drainage basin, we've been talking about drought, it's serious, but maybe we can all take a moment and recognize and be grateful for what's been happening today in recent days. We started this water year the best it has in 10+ years. Maybe we take away to say, in some way, or do something, or a gratitude for the water that's coming. It's a great blessing. The proposed draft that has been circulated leaves me concerned in terms of what comments have been made by the council and what the language states in particular. As the way it's been framed tonight is this is a water issue, prior comment addressed that. But in order to execute the temporary land use regulation under section 504, there's specific requirements. And there's some statements here that I haven't heard other than a blanket statement in the document itself is drafted or a comment in passing, looking for a record, something specific. We can look at the different whereas. I wish there was a number, but there's not. It says,
On page 1?
yeah, I'm just gonna kind of flow through on page 1. We're talking about the town is authorized and responsible to protect its groundwater from contamination and approved development. It goes on and talks about urgent need of current estimates and the impact previously projects will have on the water supply systems, septic saturation, ensure proper responsible management within the town. To my understanding, the water culinary source is not the same cup that we're putting the wastewater in if it's a septic system. Water is coming miles and miles away from what the wastewater here. In the 1990s, the Washington County area conducted a septic system study, and that was available to the prior town councils throughout the area and gave density recommendations. This town adopted essentially a 1 residential septic to 1 acre. That's significantly less, or excuse me, the density is significantly higher than what was recommended. It could have been 7 acres to 1 septic.
Are you
Density.
talking about the Allen and Blue study?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
So prior administrations have made decisions to have a much higher density. But again, what's the factual connection of, certainly there's going to be discharge and wastewater. How is that impacting the culinary system when it's coming from a completely different source? I'm not saying we can pollute the water, the groundwater, it all impacts and interconnects, but there's not an immediate, the straw's coming out of the same place where it's being poured in. Also, a lot of these projects, in particular, as I represent White Bison, this project didn't start yesterday. It's been about a decade. The first conditional use permit was 2019. Potential connections of 200. Those are connections, but also got to look at what's the equivalent. These aren't traditional residential. It may be 30 connections are the equivalent of the density of what's being allowed at 200. But this isn't a surprise. So what's factually, as I look at this draft, what's the immediate need? Why do we need to stop this? There have been comments made, are going back to the list here, about halfway through, groundwater contaminations have been identified within the town.
It should say suspected.
What's the evidence of actual or suspected contamination? There needs to be a record of that.
I understand what you're saying. It was,
It's just a comment.
okay,
If
yeah.
it's passed, again, it's an incomplete record. The town has 300 connections. They haven't gone yesterday. They may not go tomorrow. If they're out, the town isn't obligated to suddenly start providing water. There's resources that I discussed earlier. But again, there's been no immediate need or urgency why we need to step in and make this temporary change. In terms of current estimates, I think the applications that have been submitted from the different developments or even homes that are being built, there's at least a good idea of what's out there and what could be the demand. And if the available water isn't there, there's no building permit issue. It stops, and that's a reality that's understood. Now, the draft here says that it's going to be stopping land use applications all the way up to building permits. There's been comments made by the council during the discussion as well as response that there would be certain people that could pull building permits, whether it's Virgin Commercial with their gas station. But as I read the draft, it says you can't pull a building permit, you can't come in and ask for a subdivision application, you can't ask and file a land zone change. Everything stops. There could be 300 homeowners coming in for 1 acre tomorrow and file the same applications under this draft. And we're still in the same predicament that what has been discussed in theory of trying to stop what's happening here in terms of running out of water. Again, that's hypothetical. I'm not expecting, but this, the draft is put out here. Again, it's hypothetical. I'm I'm not seeing the evidence supporting this, of why it's needed here. Financially, this is already been addressed, but this is the livelihood, not of the developers only, but there's families. The White Bison Resort alone has 10 families that are financially tied to this. This project to stop can't move forward. Those 10 families don't have income. They lose jobs. How would we feel if we were told we can't go to work and get a paycheck for 6 months? There's a real impact here. It was mentioned Virgin Commercial can get a building permit, and what I've observed in the comments tonight, yet again, I was talking with my client earlier today on that project, and he's planning to submit his building permit and drawings later this month. As this draft reads, he can't for 6 months. It wouldn't happen. If there is a moratorium, building permits can be allowed, this needs to be adjusted. So it's specifically allowing building permits to hold. And that gets me to the point, under the state of Utah, there's what's called the vested right doctrine. At a certain point, when you get to land use issues, those rights vest, and you have the ability to continue to move forward. An offer here on the public comment record be available as part of the minutes, and this is advisory opinion by the Utah Ombudsman, issued June 10th, 2014. And it goes through this idea of what is the vested doctrine. And in short, it says, land use application, when it conforms to the zoning ordinance in effect at the time of the application, is entitled to approval of that application. And it can move forward with that in terms of application. What this is proposing is everything would stop, even if there's an approved application for land use, even the building could move forward. That decision goes on to say, and quote, the Utah State Supreme Court case of Western Land Equities says, the economic waste that occurs when a project is halted after substantial costs have been incurred in its commencement is of no benefit either to the public or to the landowners. Now, this is key. Here we've been talking as a public interest, hey, let's stop these, let's see, there's a public interest there, but the court, highest court in our state says there is no public benefit when project is commenced and it's halted. Government power should be exercised in a manner that is reasonable and to the extent possible predictable. An property owner should be able to plan for developing his property in a manner permitted by existing zoning regulations with some degree of assurance that the basic ground rules will not be changed midstream. This proposed moratorium will be changing the game midstream. And there's other points that go on and talk about these vested rights. But ultimately, once approvals, land use approvals have been made, those are vested rights. They can't be stopped. You can't go back and revisit. They are vested. And this is also referenced in code section Utah Code 10-90-509 that's codified what I've been referencing in this advisory opinion, as well as case support. Appreciate the discussion. I think it's healthy to have input from both sides. Ultimately, there is not an immediate need in terms of water. If there are ulterior motives or issues, there needs to be more facts before this can be a valid moratorium. There are appropriate instances. At this point, I haven't heard enough. There's not a record here to show why the town is justified in taking such an exceptional and drastic move. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have got to stop this. How many more comments? I mean, a lot of these comments that we've been hearing would not have been made if we had talked first, because you guys misunderstand some of what our intent is. And you guys keep bringing up something that's like, that's not the intent, that's not the intent, that's not the intent. And it never would have been mentioned if we had talked first. So at some point, this has to stop with all the comments from the public because we've got stuff to say.
I'll just say, let's make a motion for an additional 10 minutes until people are done.
10 minutes and then, oh, unless
10
they're
minutes.
done before that.
10 minutes unless they're done before.
Okay, all right,
Somebody
10
wants to
minutes,
second.
all right.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm starting my time.
We haven't voted on
Oh,
that.
sorry. Paul,
No,
you don't want to limit the public debate?
no.
You don't want to limit, you want it to keep it going?
I would give everybody a chance to speak, to limit the time everybody speaks. I'm not
Okay,
gonna
but-
limit the number. So,
Okay,
I
no,
want to revise my motion. To say we let everyone speak, but limit the time as to 2 minutes per person, or max.
Can we know this in no seconds?
no seconds.
They have-
Nobody coming back for a second
One
time.
second. Sorry. for the long-
Go.
I still would vote no because it's not consistent with what we gave the earlier individuals. We should get that prior to the start of the public hearing. So I'll vote no, and we'll continue on this process. I'm
Okay,
probably gonna
well,
lose, but
okay,
I'm voting
okay.
no.
Jean?
And I'm gonna vote no as well. I want to hear everybody on this.
Okay. Leroy?
No.
Okay. I want to stop, but obviously I'm not voted, so go on. I don't know what's going on.
Ready?
Okay.
That's
This is Sean, I'm going to,
That was
Take
not,
less than a minute.
that was not what the motion was dropped.
Okay.
They're good, they know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just can't hear.
I'd like to mention I'm not a developer, but I am a concerned citizen. This particular ordinance has been written. It was discussed in the last meeting. You guys thought that something could be done there. This was about a short-term rental overlay, and all of a sudden it became all development. I'm a bit concerned that I've written plenty of ordinances myself over the years. Anytime that an ordinance has been written strictly just through fear and the issue of scarcity, it has failed miserably. So we don't want to step in that this time as a town. Yes, we have some concerns, but I don't believe that that this scarcity issue, we've been set up tonight with a special meeting with these particular items on the agenda are really valid. I think we really need to thank the gentleman for going through that ordinance. I don't know how many have read that, but I wouldn't put my name on it. It definitely needs some revisions. If there's anything similar to what you guys want to pass with that, all the whereases have to be stricken out, the therefores. I can't even remodel my house according to what it says in there. So you got to take a look at that. Let's slow down, take a look at it. That's where the pause needs to be taken, is on trying to crown down these regulations on us citizens and the developers as well. Thanks.
Hi, Eric Peterson. I'm a developer working under the White Bison Resort on parcel 7. So I just want to share real quick, like, why we're doing this. Me and my two other partners, we've been coming to design forever. Like, this has been our place. We just love being here. And the more we come, the more we've just noticed how much we just want to be a part of something here, just build an awesome project, just like provide an awesome space and an awesome experience for other people to come and experience what we've done. And we've had that opportunity when like part of the White Bison that we're developing has come up. And so we put it under contract and we're just putting together an amazing experience that we know is just going to provide a lot of awesome like opportunities for people to just see the beauty that we all get to experience. And that's what we're doing. And this moratorium, like obviously won't crush that per se, but there are timelines that happen when you develop. And there are people you line up and money you line up, and if the moratorium goes through, I don't know if we're gonna be able to fulfill that dream that we have and the way we're thinking of, just because it adds a bunch of unknowns. And so, like, I'm just excited to see where we can go with this project. I'm hoping this moratorium isn't passed in a way that could jeopardize that. And so I just wanted to share that experience really quick. Thank you so much.
She's been up.
But I thought we were changing.
We did not,
They got voted down.
we got voted down.
Welcome to the public.
I just wanna thank everybody who's been civil in their tone and comments and accurate in what they have presented. I disagree with some of them, but a lot of it is not constructive. What is constructive is, we do have limited water resources. 30% is misleading. As Mark Twain said, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. 40% of 1,000 is not a very big number. And white bison is going to suck most of that up as it is currently planned. So we have to prepare. If you want your vision, we have to do this because those 300 are a bargaining chip. And it's about the only one we have. Because who's going to pay for that re-entrance fee? We are. If they want to step up and pay for that re-entrance fee, step up.
Okay, let's
I'm not
spend up.
stopping anything. You guys cannot stop it, so let me go. Go ahead, Caleb.
When it was recently said before that this town has money set aside for that fee, so we've already paid for it in terms of the water thing, so it's there. And I think we have to be careful with public safety concerns in this ordinance passing, because there were a lot of things within our recent history passed in the name of public safety that ended up being detrimental due to secondary and tertiary impacts. So I think as a government entity, we need to be very wise in what we decide to do today, because there's so much that will be impacted no matter our choices. But a moratorium in the name of public health safety, that can be, I perceive that as very dangerous. Thank you.
Jana was like, that's-
Okay,
Jump on it, jump on it.
I
Hurry.
am. No more comments. We will now discuss among the town council. Oh. What do you have to say?
Looking for a motion.
No, I didn't ask if you were making a motion. I
I
said
don't
we're
have
gonna
nothing to add
discuss.
at this point. I'll listen to everybody. Oh, I do have one question. Because it's an earlier question. When we were trying to figure out the numbers of how many connections we have left,
Mhm.
we do have some undeveloped lots that have been paying, I think, what, $22 a month?
There's 121 of those.
121 of those. Are they included in that?
Yes.
Yes.
And then what effect does that have on negotiations with the Water Conservancy District? Is that something they're gonna recognize as a connection to the town or not in the future?
I think it's
They're,
set in stone.
yeah, they're considered standby accounts, but they're guaranteed the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they
won't
pay,
take-
that's why they pay like half of the impact fee for that, so that they can have a guaranteed connection.
But plus they pay a monthly fee.
And they pay a monthly fee
Oh,
as well.
yeah, but pay $22 a month.
Yeah.
or
Yeah, and
not.
it's raised over time, it hasn't just sat.
Yeah, it's been lower and it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I wanted to make clear with the proposed moratorium, which
maybe, as Matt said, the language needs to be clarified. But in no circumstances was this intended to stop anything that is already under construction. This is not gonna stop the KOA going in, this is not gonna stop AutoCAN, this is not gonna stop what Labree's doing. This is not gonna stop what's already underway at, White Bison, or as April called it, White Buffalo. I thought that's a good way to mix the two. Could it stop like the stuff that has not come in and gotten a conditional use permit at White Bison? I would think so, but not the stuff that's already going. I mean, this is not intended to stop anything that is already underway. Just want to make that clear. And so it could be, as Matt was saying, the language could be clarified, because I see when I was reading it, as you were explaining the way you interpreted it, I see what you're saying. And so the language could be clarified. So I'll just say that. Because so many of the comments were about, don't stop the projects that are already going. It's like, well, that's not the intent, never was. So just want to bring that up. Okay, yes, what were you gonna say, Misty?
I think it's a point of clarification on that one, because we'll also have it on the agenda to possibly revoke the conditional use permit that is currently standing.
Yeah, but that hasn't even started.
Wait a minute.
Hear my question now.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry.
Then.
Okay, I thought you were done.
I have
I'm
to go,
sorry.
took a bite before you realized it.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
I need some milk done. Anyway. So my question is, if it goes through, because you're saying that it's currently there, it's already there, plus they have one before. That's still 134 if we revoke this one. No, I'm clarifying this again. There's 100 and so many on the the conditional use permit, correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
With a conditional use permit that happened before the one we have on the agenda, correct? How many was that? 100 and something,
You
Jerry?
have to ask Jared.
Your conditional use permits, when you filed them from the paperwork I read the other day, there's one in between your original one. And there's the one in the middle that started in
2021?
2021, and then there's this one.
So
So if we revoke this one, you still already have 134,
136.
36, I have the number wrong. 136 units that you could develop. This one is only to bump it to 200 units from the 134.
The original was 200.
And the original was
When
200.
2019, 2021 was 136.
Then you went less,
This one goes back to 200.
and then this goes, so the way you're interpreting this, that 134, if we rejected, the other one would still stand. I just want clarification that that's in your intent for this order.
I don't know. I can't answer that. I have not looked at it the way you're talking about.
Because if you look at them in chronological order, the way they were posted. If this one is revoked, they still have one. available.
Even our existing RV park that we've already permitted, we do not have our permit for our clubhouse. We're still doing the architecture.
But you have the conditional use.
With the conditional use permit, but we don't have the permit for the clubhouse, so I wouldn't want to have that stopped. We don't have the permit for the additional pool yet.
Right.
We have it for one of them. So, like, we're working on these things and the full sub midstream is.
Yeah, my question was though that one would still stand and still be permissible. Do you understand where I'm
I
coming
do,
from?
but I think there's a point of clarification that needs to be made. A CMP does not guarantee any water rights.
Right, I understand
That's
that.
only with the building permit. Building permit has a litany of things that have to be met, like everything from DOT approval, if you're on the highway, to sewer, to everything else that has to be put in place before a building permit can be applied for.
So
So
to my next question, this moratorium talks about building, it doesn't talk about water connections to me. It said they're gonna stop building. Why are we not talking about just stopping water connections?
I don't know, I didn't write.
That's my point of question, because that's what we're worried about, right? And we're gonna stop building, period. They've already got their conditional use permits. It's kind of to what Mr. Spencer talked about.
Let's step down for a moment.
is,
Or stepped out.
I wrote it down.
He's right there.
You're right, Misty, Matt also spoke to that, Matt.
Yeah, Matt
No,
brought that
and
up.
Matt spoke to it as well as Adam's brother,
Caleb.
Caleb spoke to it as well.
We're talking about new. This is
I
about
know,
new.
I just want to make sure I'm clear that I understand.
And that's why I said,
what
when
you're
Matt brought this up, I was like, he's right, this could be clarified. What, I think the word continue could just be changed to new. But we were not changing, it was not intended to stop anything that is already underway. It's just not.
How do you make the differentiation? That's my question.
Well, I don't know.
I'm saying that because ones like Mr. Lee's development, they've gone through a lot of stuff. They haven't applied for a permit, so it would be a new permit with that construction. Jared Westhoff's project or Munn's project, they have completed some, so it's in process. They've got permits in the past, so it's an ongoing deal. But somebody that's coming in for a new one, like the fellow up there by the water tank. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I keep Justin's. He has not applied for the building permit yet, but he's doing all these other things. The way this is written would halt all.
Okay,
And that's
so let me ask you guys
that's-
this.
well, that's one of my issues.
Let me ask you guys this, since you're asking all these questions, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? What about this? What about this? If ultimately your intent is to vote no on the moratorium, then let's just make the motion, vote no, and let's just move on. If that's the intent.
The intent is to get clarification. I've made my decision based on comments and everything else that's going on here tonight, but I still would like to understand where you're coming from, so that if this is going to be revised in the future, or if we decide we're going to push something through tonight, I at least understand.
It's just conversation. It's not-
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that because we're running so long,
Right.
that if all of this conversation is ultimately not going to change your intent to vote no, then we might as well just have a vote and move on. That's all I'm saying. That's just because we've been here 3 hours almost.
So which one of these?
And
is on the
he said
table?
it was going to be a 5-hour meeting, and I disagreed, but we're getting there, aren't we?
Accepted. Water isn't accepted, and the moratorium.
Which items on this?
None of these items are actually on the table. This was on here for us to discuss. I had discussed and put on the agenda. I had discussed possible vote item. We had one ordinance initially, and then we have a second, whichever. Yeah, sure. I don't care. If you guys have a preference for one over the other, where one you would actually give some consideration to, then we can take them one by one. Why don't you just do that? Okay. However, I do, the one, out of all the comments that were made tonight, the one that I find the most compelling is if we are negotiating with the Water Conservancy District with a certain number of connections, and we continue to just give out permits, you're whittling away at the number that we were planning to use with the Water Conservancy District to negotiate with. And so you are eliminating your negotiating position. Just, that's the most compelling comment I've heard out of everything that was said tonight. Just want to throw that out there. So. Anybody got a motion?
Well, to get it started and then people can make amendments to the ordinance,
Okay.
I would have moved for approval of ordinance 2023-01, the one with the underscore provisions that was in our packet.
That's proposal B, I assume.
Proposal B,
Okay,
and then I assume there would be some amendments to it, so I'm moving for approval.
Now, that was C, right?
No, there were two different proposed ordinances on number C. We had a proposal A and a proposal B.
Well, neither one of mine have a different thing on it. So I don't know which one we're talking.
The one that's got underlined.
The one that has underlined.
This is the one that he's talking about.
Yeah, but that should have been.
Here.
I understand where it is.
I was just gonna write it.
But what I'm saying is this, when you present this to us, it should be so that we know what you're talking about without having to ask a question.
All right, so is that your, did you have a comment on that one, or that was the other question?
That was my question.
Any, I know we need a second, I just wondered if there was any amendment to this motion.
We need a second before we have that amendment.
Okay, then I'll second your motion so that we can move on to discuss an amendment. Any discussion? No discussion? Then I will bring it to a vote. Paul,
I vote aye for the moratorium.
Jean,
I vote no.
and I actually vote no on this one. We will-
I don't know.
Misty,
I don't know. But we're still opening up to this one.
yes, we're on to eight.
It's the one that had the line at the top of the words. Or is it-
Yes, that's it. That was proposal A. That one had, is pretty, very close to the same, very close to B. It just allowed for some development houses, you know, ones that used one ERC per project. That's what this one had. And I would propose that we clarify on the whereases on page 2, the main one that was unclear to that. And I would change, I'd have a couple of changes where I have groundwater protection has been identified as a suspected. Heath, I have a question for you on this. Since Matt had brought up some of these that had no documentation to support, and you and I happened to talk about that very same thing today, are these things that you would suggest be removed? These whereases, such as we're talking about the groundwater contamination, the one talking about electricity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You have to have a clear, identified, compelling. It says compelling countervailing public interest. It can't be guess or supposition. It needs to be based on something.
So for example, since we are asking for a bid right now on a groundwater protection study, once we have the result of the groundwater protection study, that would be able to be used as the evidence to support such thing.
Yes.
And the statement about electricity, which I'm not finding right now in here, I know it's in here on second page.
Second page, the top one.
Okay, right now, there it is.
However, we don't provide
Yes.
electrical service.
It comes from Rocky Mountain Power.
So if we approve something in order for them to move forward and get signed off on their building plans to get a building permit, they've got to get that approval from Rocky Mountain Power. If there's not sufficient power, then they have to pay to extend or develop power. That's not the town's issue.
So,
I have one more thing and then I'll let you talk. So based on that, what you're saying about supposition. Would the way, with what we have right now from the Water Conservancy District telling us that we would be prevented from joining the water pooling agreement if this revised agreement goes through, is that
I prefer
evidence
to
or
have that
no?
in writing.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. That's where I was going with this, was if you would prefer to see that in writing to support such a
That would help.
moratorium.
That would be a basis.
Okay. Yes, you may know. I just
We
want
need
to ask that.
Consider the,
Yes.
we need to consider the saturation of the connections. I think we need to have a very clear identification of remaining connections, because let me make sure that we all understand. The 1997 agreement says we can have 1,000 connections or use of up to 1,000 acre feet of water. That's based on duty. Okay,
On what?
on the duty and state regulations, the Division of Water Rights, State Engineer's Office defines what duties are. They have a conversion for various types of commercial. They indicate that inside only 0.45 of an acre foot of water annually. Okay, we have large lots here. So it may very well be that a home on an acre could be closer to be a conversion of one home, 1 acre foot. As you and I spoke with Zach Renstrom, he thought it was closer to 0.89. There is a conversion for recreational or seasonal uses of 0.25. So can we say that what in White Bison was just issued in a conditional use permit is going to use up 200 connections? It may only use up 90 or 45 or roughly about 50. But we need to calculate what we have, because I think, and there needs to be two methods of calculation, both our connection from a connection standpoint and from a duty or usage standpoint of 1,000 acre feet. Because we may very well find when we're starting to see some of these uses coming in a higher density because they're using a septic package plant, that we're not chipping away at the 1,000 acre feet from a duty standpoint. And we need to make sure that the Conservancy District is in agreement with our calculations, because they're the other party to our 1997 agreement. So I don't know that we have compelling, countervailing public interest.
Because we don't
that we
have
can
the
find. We don't
documentation.
have all the numbers.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. If someone wanted to ask me before this ordinance was.
Okay, yes. Your point was made.
Thank you.
Yes, Matt, come.
It's just a question, in terms of the duty calculation, does the agreement spell out whether the duty at the time of that agreement applies or the duty today? Because that's a significant difference. You could say back then it was 0.9 for a traditional residential connection. This year, it just went down to 0.6, 0.59. That's a significant change. So
That's 300 more connections.
So
It doesn't identify.
I would make the presumption it's when you make the connection, that's the
I would
calculation.
assume so too. I think that's the reasonable way it should be interpreted at the time of connection.
My legal opinion is the town just got 300 more connections.
Well.
Your legal conclusion, however, I think that it would require a lot of analysis and study to come up with that, and it needs to be peer reviewed by the Conservancy District, and we need to be in agreement so that we all understand exactly whether we are nearing DEFCON 3.
I agree, but that's just my.
And it should be an engineer.
Yeah. Someone much more knowledgeable
Okay.
than myself.
All right. All right, so, yes, Jean.
I just want to make sure.
Yes.
So this is a question for Heath. A resolution needs to be written before the meeting, before we can do a resolution.
No, you can make oral resolutions.
I'd like to make an oral resolution. I'd like to make an oral resolution that we engage Heath with the Water Conservancy to make a determination on number of connections, as well as what their minimum will be if we're using up some while this agreement is going on, or while these negotiations are going on. So we at least have some idea of whether a moratorium is the right way to go or not. I'll make a motion to deny this current moratorium because I think it's got a lot of things that need to be worked on, and invite the mayor to bring one to the 19th meeting.
When you say this resolution, you mean proposal A, this
The
one?
one that we're looking at right now.
Okay.
whichever one that is.
Okay.
If that's the one you want to work with, or if you want to scrap it, certainly that's fine too. But I'm just saying, I think we got to bring it to the 19th. I want to also make sure that the public understands that you can't just run in and get a building permit. So between now and the 19th, people that have already started the process are working through it. They've got their res checks, they've got their sewer permits. These things take time. They would likely still get a permit, but anybody that's here tonight is saying, I gotta get my permit, there's a litany of things that they have to acquire that take more time than they're gonna have between now and the 19th. I think that gives us some breathing room, and that's my motion.
I'll second.
Before we vote, I want to clarify, you said you wanted him to work with the Water Conservancy District to clarify the number of connections, and what about the water?
And to see, you know, our discussion was if we give you our remaining 300, because that's the number that's kind of out there, would you accept us into the, and he was saying yes. So I'm asking if he could work with them to say, all right, obviously, we're gonna be continuing to build.
Mhm.
What would be your minimum that you would accept us in? That way we
Okay.
get an idea if a moratorium is something that should.
Which should be that, okay.
Do we need to do them both together, or how do we?
Let's not do it now. Let's do, you've got a motion that's been made.
Made and seconded. I just was
That
clarifying.
you can reestablish your motion for resolution.
Leroy did.
So
All right, so-
point of order, what are we voting on?
We are voting on
We're
Gene's
voting on this
resolution.
first.
No,
No.
Right?
you're voting on his motion to reject.
Deny this and-
To reject the moratorium.
Okay, it was, you're right, that was two motions all in one.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, and are you seconding the motion to deny?
Correct.
Okay. Paul,
No,
Jean,
Yes.
Jean, I'm actually gonna say, yes.
No.
No, this is a
No,
motion to
yes,
deny.
yes, I meant yes. When you said yes.
Yes.
I was just saying, yeah.
How's it feel to know the world revolves around you? You said that, everybody stopped. Okay, so then what do I do?
Now, what's your motion for the resolution?
Yeah, just motion for an oral resolution to equip our attorney to engage with the Water Conservancy. That is the right word, but not equip, but engage with the Water Conservancy regarding actual number of hookups that we have left, as well as minimum number that would still be negotiable to bring us onto the pooling agreement. That's what we said, but
and is there a component that will bring back a resolution for a moratorium on the 19th?
That was the purpose of the
Yes.
motion.
Okay,
I mean, that-
if that's part of
I think, I don't know that it would be debate, but that would be, in my mind, a factual basis for imposing a moratorium. Where I don't know that we have that
Right now.
clear.
So I,
do we want to finish this, and do you want to amend it, or what? do you want?
well, that, I was asking if your motion included bringing back a resolution for a moratorium to vote on the 19th.
My original motion was to say that the mayor could bring back a revised one, but this one I'm saying this is just to engage Heath to get us information, not to create a moratorium from this decision. Just bring us information.
What,
Is that making sense? Like I asked her in the original motion, I want to deny this, but I'm asking the mayor to bring something on the 19th.
yeah, I'll wait till there's a second and then I'll.
Okay,
amend it.
okay. I second.
Okay, then I make a motion to amend to include in that a resolution for a moratorium be brought back on the 19th.
And clarify, it's the ordinance.
An ordinance, sorry. Thank you, ordinance. For the 19th. So I'm amending the motion that that we bring back an ordinance for a moratorium to be considered on the 19th. We don't have to approve it, but we consider it for the 19th
17th.
or the 17th.
What's the difference between my original and this
Well, first of all, we've got and requested amendment. Do we have a second? That is, or do you accept as a friendly amendment?
one? I can't accept unless I understand when my original denial of this included.
It requires an ordinance be ready and on for possible action at the 19th. Your original vote, your resolution was if Jean wants to, she can. So it was permissive. This would make it mandatory.
I'll accept that.
All right, then I second amendment. All right. Oh.
Aye.
Jean.
Aye.
Jean, aye. Leroy,
No.
Misty.
Yes.
All right. Fine. On to the last item. Which has to do with the CUP. Now, I have proposed an ordinance about revoking the CUP. Leroy, I'm sorry. He said not the way to go, so I don't even want to address that. We're going to hey, I heard that. Unfortunately, we still have to talk about the third item, Jay. Sorry about that. What Heath advised that the way to proceed with this, if we want to reconsider this CUP, is the town council to vote on an appeal. That an appeal is the proper method on this, and that the town council could vote to appeal, but we can't appeal to ourselves. If we appeal, it would go to the appeal authority. Because we can't vote to, this is Pete's recommendation, we cannot vote to appeal to ourselves. Correct?
So under our ordinance, the issuance of conditions permit can be appealed by the
The
applicant.
town.
If they don't like it, it can be done by the town, and or it can be done by an affected party. Okay, now, the town, think about it, who makes the decision whether the town wants to challenge the decision of the zoning administrator? If they don't like it, that would be the council. However, it says that these, in this situation, that these appeals are heard by the town council. So I'm going to suggest that if there is a motion, if there is a majority who wants the council to appeal the decision, that they also move to appeal the decision and delegate their authority to the appeal authority to hear the appeal. If there is such, that would be the proper way of doing it. You as a council has delegated that land use authority to the planning administrator, whether or not there is a concern over how much authority the zoning administrator has or not. That's a matter of, you guys can act legislatively and revise the ordinance reducing the zoning administrator's authority, but it's been given. And it is my legal opinion, which I know that me and Mr. Louis may disagree, but he was acting administratively in issuing that permit. He was not acting legislatively. You can't delegate your lawmaking authority, but you can delegate ministerial or administrative functions and the actual issuance of a permit and reviewing it in compared to our ordinances and requiring certain conditions on that permit, that is administrative, and even determining whether it is a class 1 or a class 2, which most cities don't have that type of tiered classification, but that is still has been determined and set by law, and it is an administrative function, of which has been delegated, and we cannot retract that by an ordinance. You can appeal this decision, and I would suggest if you don't like how much authority the zoning administrator has, then try to then amend the ordinance and reduce his authority. I put in some very objective requirements on how he has to evaluate something as a class 1 CUP or a class 2, because I would agree from the person who drafted that ordinance that there's not tons of objective standards. It really leaves a lot of discretion to that planning administrator to determine, hey, do I want to decide this one, or do I want to kick it over to the planning commission and let them go through a public hearing process and do it?
And Heath, thank you. But my question right now is a slightly different interpretation on the appeal process that you just mentioned. Because the ordinance mentions that the town or any adversely affected person, town or applicant can appeal to the town council. And so when I looked at it, my view was that the appeal authority has to be the town council. So the only way that the use of the term town, which it didn't say town council, the town decision to appeal could be made by the head of the executive branch, which would be the mayor. The mayor could appeal it, and then it would go to the town council for the hearing rather than the appeal authority. That's how I would view that provision.
That goes back a little bit to our form of government where we have a 5-member council and the mayor is a voting member of the council, and decisions are made by the council, even on key administrative things, although she is the day-to-day administrator. So I don't agree with that. I appreciate.
Yeah, and so that's where I came down.
You guys finished just as I put it.
I want to add one more thing, but
Go
I'll
ahead.
let you chew. I think it's important the public understands something about the level 1 CUP. The level 1 CUP is written in the ordinance, does not allow me to have a public hearing. Now, that may seem like, oh, you should just be able to do that and get public input. I am not allowed to do that according to the ordinance. If I choose to do a public hearing that a developer could then adversely be affected by, they could say, you did not have the right to have a public hearing according to a level 1 CUP. I just want to make sure that's understood. Isn't it trying to bypass the public process? It's exactly as Heath said, the level 1, level 2 CUP was put into effect with specific guidelines by previous legislative body, and that's the role that I hold. How I choose to execute it, I look at the very things that are there in chapter 4 and go through them to determine whether or not it's a level 1 or level 2. And it isn't just by scope of the project. I don't look and say, well, this is a big project, so it has to be a level 2, or this is a small project, it needs to be a level 1. There's other factors that go into it, and I encourage everybody to take a look at, I'm sorry, not 4, chapter 4, chapter 16 to understand how the conditional process works. Anyway, I am very much open, and I've stated this before, to including some sort of a
If we're
objective
going to
process.
make some revisions to that, to the zoning administrator's authority, like being objective standards in, I think we ought to create the ability for him, even on level 1 CUPs, to have public hearings or take public comment. Somehow post it, allow people to submit comments some way so that it feels that it's not just Gene individually. Because that has taken a fair amount of arrows.
What is the deadline for the kind of bill on this?
That's a question and to why why we had this special hearing, when we did. Would the date, the question is that the code says the date of determination, not the date the public was notified, it's the date of determination. And the thing is dated December 22nd, and that would make the 15th day tomorrow. And so I wanted to have this before that 15 day. If you work from the day that the public was notified when it was published, then we have another week. I just don't know which exactly is the 15th day, and that's why I wanted to do this hearing today.
Council wants to do it, I would say out of abundance of caution.
That's my thought.
Out of-
Well, that is true. But we are talking about the town, what we're talking about tonight is if the town council wanted to do an appeal.
Well, I would do that, you know,
Okay.
but I, if it's closed tomorrow, then I shan't.
We can make arrangements, I would assume, for the appeal to be accepted if you are wanting to do that. I know Crystal's like, thanks a lot.
Keep the meeting going until midnight.
Oh, there we go. Then I can hand it over, and there we go.
I'm still working after this meeting, FYI. Just saying, I still have stuff I have to do before I leave. The office is still technically open.
I
They just
see.
chased me down the curve, my home.
Question for Heath. 1608, I want to make sure that I understand this. In the event of an appeal, does it look at the items under 1608, item E?
I don't know.
Number, it says the town council may, after notice and hearing before the council, revoke or suspend a CUP if it's determined the CUP was obtained by misrepresentation or fraud, the conditions or any amendments or conditions imposed upon the CUP have not been met, or the detrimental effects of the use are not substantially mitigated by the conditions that were set, and no modification or substitution of said conditions will serve to properly mitigate such detrimental effects.
So you're asking, is that how we would analyze?
I'm asking if an appeal is done, are these the criteria that are looked at?
But whether, I think so that it would be a clear conflict of interest for the council to vote to appeal it and then hear the appeal. They need to delegate it to the appeal authority, who is supposed to be a neutral. And he would look at it, review it based on that criteria that you're appealing in 1608.
Okay, another question. As an independent contractor, am I required to get my own legal counsel to represent my decision?
And like,
But he's not required to.
Nobody's required to,
Yeah.
not required.
but I would be,
If someone asks me to legal counsel as an attorney, I'm gonna always advise that you ask.
I'm asking that because he represents the town and I'm representing the decision that is made.
That's assuming if we go to the.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm asking, to clarify.
If we have a citizen file an appeal, then it would be to the town council, so.
Correct. Yeah, I just want to point clarification. Thank you. Okay.
What, Misty, you look like you want to say something?
If there's an appeal on the table, not necessarily from the council, and we're being cautioned by our lawyers on an appeal. I think we should just do as you were stating before and then not vote on this tonight. Because there's an appeal on the floor.
Well,
It was
someone
needed,
has,
Somebody was willing to do it.
right, that's what she's talking about.
That's all I was asking. Is that
Well, we've made it very clear since the last time we had a similar type of an appeal that when you're signing the appeal application, you acknowledge that you're paying for all the expenses incurred by the town with regards to the appeal. That means paying the appeal authority and paying for the town's legal constitute.
I don't
But
know if I
we're-
agree with that.
But if a citizen is filing this, and it's going to the town council, and there is no appeal authority, we're the appeal authority. There is no fee for an appeal authority. Okay,
I think we went through this one.
Yeah, we went through this
Discussed
one,
about the
yeah.
problem with being able to just appeal willy-nilly without having fees attached for the process.
We need to come back and do that fee.
that fee needs to be redone, yes. So
What does the current fee schedule say, or does it say?
for an appeal,
Yeah.
$500, the fee for the appeal is $500.
It's 500, and it's an application
Fee.
non-refundable, $500.
So, I am torn on how I'm supposed to proceed with this when we got that, what are you gonna say, Keith? What are you gonna recommend?
I'm gonna also make a recommendation, I think, for the benefit of two members of the council. We have an ordinance that was prepared by the mayor attempting to terminate the CUP. And we have a member of the council who issued the CUP. I would suggest that we vote by the council to
Conflict of
whether or not
interest.
should we have you to recuse yourself.
Okay,
So it's gonna take. That would be my, just out of utmost
abundance of caution.
abundance of caution.
That's if the town.
That's just at the towns. But I'm gonna be honest with you, it really wasn't on the agenda.
What was not on the agenda?
Your ordinance was on the agenda.
No, it was not.
Excuse me, the ordinance is.
Your ordinance is.
The ordinance to vote is on the agenda. It's item number.
It says discussion and possible reversion, but it doesn't, then I don't have the ordinance.
It says a discussion and possible review. Oh, you just said discussion. During the possible revocation.
Yeah.
And then there's this ordinance.
Right.
Are you talking about to recuse themselves tonight or for the appeal?
At the- It would be later on.
So the question now is, are we doing on the ordinance?
No, I said I was not going, I said when we brought up this topic, that I had put that out there, but I was not planning for us to address it at all.
Does that need a vote to deny what's on the agenda?
Nobody's made a motion to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And asking to-
I'm sorry, we keep talking, Matt has raised his hand more than once, so yes,
Is there gonna be public comment on this? The agenda says that this item has public comment.
I will take public comment if we think it's necessary. What would you like to say? I assume you have something you would like to say.
Yes, certainly we have something to say.
Jared Westcott with Design Sunset Holdings. First of all, I want to say that Dwayne wishes that he could have been here tonight. He's just overcome a bout with COVID and his wife is seriously ill from her complications from fighting COVID, and so he's not able to be here. He does very much appreciate being part of the community. I got a question. I want to know who wrote this. And then the reason I want to know who wrote this, as much of this ordinance 2023-02 is not accurate, not true, sensationalized, and or the person who wrote it clearly does not understand what's going on. This is not fair to produce a document like this to me, my family, Dwayne and Susan Munn and their family, to any member of our staff and our team that rely on our project for income, any of the contractors, construction workers, and multiple people who work on this, or the public, or those concerned citizens, because much of what they might infer or take out of what's written here is not accurate. And public discourse and comment should be based off of accurate information, not senseless, not information that's been made to appear something it's not. This is not good governance. And this is very frustrating. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel and I can't get off for 13 years. And by my count, this is 16 bites of the apple to deny our project its property rights. And so I hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from, that this is beyond frustrating. This is beyond frustrating. And I can't even begin to express the level of frustration reading something like this causes. Because it's not accurate, Mayor.
But we
It's
just-
not.
Okay, but we've decided we're not even addressing it.
But you put it out there in the public sphere and we have a bunch of people who think this is accurate. This is not fair.
Okay,
There's no equity in what you've done here. If you're the author of this, I want to know. This is not fair. I mean, good grief. We're placing a restriction on 19 acres of land through a covenant, through the filing these CUPs, so that if I get hit by a truck, the next owner can't go sell it to someone else. And there's an inference in here that we're trying to put short-term rental on here when the maps clearly dictate that it's recreational open space or natural open space. And yet it's implying in here that it's somehow gonna have a hotel on it. And it's saying that half the acreage is across the river. It's not true. It's saying that this is egregiously against the town interest. Are you out of your mind? We put in sewer, we put in water, we've spent millions of dollars, we put in turn lanes. We've done all kinds of things that are in the town's interest that don't just benefit us, that benefit others. We've paid for a study from Rocky Mountain Power that addresses not just our project, but what the town needs as a whole. That's on our dime.
okay,
And you're sitting here making all kinds of stuff in here that is not accurate. Forgive me for being a little hot, but
okay.
this has been going on 13 years.
Some of the stuff that just to respond to some of what you were saying, some of what you were just discussing has nothing to do with this. This CUP is about that parcel and that parcel only. This has nothing to do with any of your other parcels and any of the other stuff that you've done to date. That's not what this is about. We're only talking about the CUP dated December 22nd, 2022, that was on parcel 7? Parcel 7?
No, that's not true. You deal with on the second page, there's a whereas conditional use permit 11/29/2021 is invalid. That's not true. I did my job. I filed a permit. I assumed it was being noticed.
I'm looking for it, I'm trying to find it.
I left the office, the second to last paragraph.
Okay, let me find it.
11/29/2021. I left the office with the understanding that those were being published to the public notice website right there. I waited 30 days. I called multiple times to see if there was any protests. And then I recorded those CUPs against all of my parcels so that we could take the refined information and have even a better CUP. I don't appreciate the inference in here at all towards the end that somehow I'm getting special favors. If I'm getting special favors, I'd like to know how, because we've been put through hell on this project. And we're not getting special favors. Gene by no means sits there and goes, yeah, do whatever you want. When we come in and we start working on these things, we go back and forth based off of what the ordinance will allow and not allow. If I want to ask for something and Gene says, you know what, that ordinance doesn't allow for it. I don't get it. Where's the special favor? You can't throw out accusations like that. It makes me look bad. It makes possibly Gene look bad. It's not fair. Like, it's the old adage of when you make an assumption, it makes a jackass out of you and me. I don't like being made a jackass out of. And I've worked really hard to do a good job and a good project. And the Munns have too. We have our life savings wrapped up into this. And we're trying to do a wonderful thing for the town of Virgin, for the guests that come, for our staff, and this is on maddening after 13 plus or minus years of this.
So would it help if, because I told Crystal to post this, would it help if I went to the same Utah Public Notice website, and we posted something that said we have withdrawn this and apologize for what was said in here. Would that make you somewhat satisfied?
I think that'd be a wonderful step.
I would be willing to do that.
I would
If that
appreciate
would
it.
make you happy, I won't say it makes you happy, because it won't make you happy. But if it would go far to relieve what you are upset about, then I would be willing to do that.
I would very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
And in fact, if you prefer, I will even run the letter by you before I post it, so that you can see what I say and approve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I do know that there's some technical things that I would like Maddie to address.
About, is it in this? Because we're not even gonna address this thing.
No, I think just more generally on the CUP and the process that we have through.
I was in line.
Sorry, man.
Sorry, man. April McKinnon. So I think the problem I have with the CUP is I have it written down item by item, and it doesn't have anything to do with the project. It has more to do with how the CUP was written. Because I think there were a lot of mistakes. For example, item 4 indicates that the building height of up to 30 feet is permitted, but in the Rulu 14.14a, the 30-foot height is not permitted but granted. There's a difference. Also, Rulu does not refer to 3 stories as allowable, unless I'm just not looking at the right ordinances. Okay. Item 3 indicates that parcel 10 meets the requirements for open space. The legal description of parcel 10 is 19 acres, but exhibit B shows 8.22 acres for parcel 10. That's 2 mistakes, I think. Item 12 indicates that a laundry facility is a permitted use. I don't see that listed in Bulu. Item 13 indicates traffic will use one access to SR9. I find it interesting that this is allowed at this location when it's a requirement that 2 accesses are required at the Lake Reed project. I'd like someone to explain that. Items 15 and 16 allow 24-month construction period with an unlimited number of phases. However, the application requirement in Rulu 16.04 requires that an estimate of time required for construction of the project, including a time required for construction of each phase, if construction is to be made in phases. So that to me doesn't really follow our rules. Item 17 should not be included in the CUP because the developer does not own the adjacent property. Item 17 does not describe or include any information on the future parcel. If the developer buys adjacent property, it should be considered at that time, not in this CUP. In conclusion, this is just another example of a CUP, a large project that has been handled with incompetence, in my opinion.
Is that all of the things that you noticed?
Well, I had some issues with the 200 units and so it had to do with water use.
Okay.
Darlene, I want to offer some context for why residents are frustrated with some developers. In this particular case, in 2014, the residents of the town was given a large mailing. As this is the proposal for what is currently White Bison. It was 200 RV packs. That's it. Mr. Munn sent out a letter which all residents received, and I quote, "Working with our planning and zoning and town council members, it became clear to me that any use of my almost 80 acres needs to be low impact and with some commercial and be beneficial to town residents." this CUP has this plan. It has 691 units. So when you say, we've been working hard, we feel like we've been baited and switched. And I would love for some explanation, outreach. We have not been publicly noticed on any of the CUP ones, except for this last one. So our due process as citizens, we haven't even had a chance to have. I hope you understand that. And we're frustrated. Last month, we were assured that by the end of the year, the beginning of this year, now, all of our ordinances would be updated, and they haven't changed. I went through and checked today.
They were finished on the 30th, just so you know.
They are not showing on Muni Code.
Oh, does it?
I hope to see that, because how can we have due process? Not everything is about cash. Not every right is related to property. Property rights are valuable. But we haven't been treated fairly either. And so please, please don't assume that we're ignorant and that we want to be involved. We care. Nobody cares more than people who live here and walk this earth. And I personally feel it's been a bait and switch, and there's been no effort to educate the community. So maybe your intentions are admirable, but it's not coming through at all. And what are you willing to do to address that? And to show us why a change from 200 to 671 units.
Okay.
Is Karen, is low impact.
Okay.
Hi there, guys. Happy New Year. My name is Joe Martinez, and I live in Rio de Sion. A lot of the stuff that I was going to discuss is I've already talked about, so I'm going to skip all that. But I am going to talk about one little thing, and I just mentioned a little bit. But it was my issues with the number 4 building height of 30 feet. Last summer, we had a very passionate and spirited debate on both the planning commission and the town council. And in the end, the people didn't want it. The planning commission didn't vote for it, and the town council also didn't vote for it. But then all of a sudden, it shows up on this. So that's where I'm really aggravated. That's one person unilaterally changed everything we discussed last summer, and we all voted, you guys voted on, and people decided. So that was a little frustration with being on that. And then the second thing, I'm just a little concerned that we would give up the town's right, sign away the town's right to the duty to enforce the ordinance is another big concern with me. So thank you very much.
Okay, man, fun.
Now the technical boring stuff, right? The last lady's comment about the project then versus now. Just to be clear briefly, that was a 56 some odd acre project that due to public input, town action, referendum was declined. My client would have been more than happy to accept that project as is. The impacts on what it would be required to turn lanes, $100,000 would have saved. There's been about $700,000 in electrical power infrastructure that's been imposed. What the project is today is a result of the public process, the application, the public hearing and input. But my client would have gladly accepted that, but the pushback was no. So where we're at today is what has been allowed, and with the input, a lot of input and changes from the public on that. The concern with the
the draft ordinance 2023-02 is it is seeking to revoke. What I understand the conversation tonight is this is simply a discussion to appeal.
Right, yes.
And that's different than what I read the draft here to
Yeah,
be.
just, that's why it's like, just ignore that.
Okay, I understand, but I'm just going off what was noticed of. Briefly, there's no the revoking powers, there's different sections under Hulu. I don't know what the town's acting on in terms of what the draft is. I haven't heard what that authority is tonight. There's been different discussions, whether it's 16.8, 16.10, 12. That's very important. One of the major concerns I have on the second page of the whereas, second whereas from the bottom, it makes a statement here, previous conditional use permit that was approved, apparently approved on 11/29/2021 is invalid. That is a legal conclusion being stated here without due process. That's a significant issue. I know Jared expressed a lot of concerns of what has been stated in here. If that is to be determined to be invalid, there's a process. And I would say that process is long past due. There's no town ordinance that goes back and specifically says where there's an administrative action, in this case, the zone administrator, how you go through and challenge that way after the fact. You have your appeals period. If you don't appeal timely, it's approved. In this scenario, we're months and months beyond. I would say in terms of something that's comparable, I've referenced 52-4-302 of Utah Code. This says in terms of a final action by the public meeting, i.e. this town council, from the time there's a final action, there's 90 days to bring a lawsuit. Otherwise, your time's off. If it's related to finances, bonding, you have 30 days. Another example would be under the administrative code in Utah. When there's a final agency action, your driver's license revoked by the agency, you have 30 days to appeal that. We just have a blanket statement by the town here saying it's invalid. These were recorded. There was a comment earlier about the town or the public isn't getting notice of what's going on. I went back and looked at the notices of what was published. When Jared was getting these processed, he was in the office, thought it was being done right there in front of him. The notice was never filed. That was a surprise to us. There were notices issued as a public record in 2020 when the original conditional use permits were there. There appears to be, whether intentionally or unintentionally, notices not being filed. But again, referencing the fact that this is going back to 2021, a blanket statement that these are conditional uses, I think that's an abuse of power and denying the property rights here. These were recorded in the public record. My client's taking extra steps to make sure these are binding, not just to benefit us as a conditional use holder, but the town, they can rely on public records that these restrictions run with the land, whether it's for our development or some future buyer on any parcel. In short, what's being proposed here is, I see it as a draft making a decision what it should be. Hey, that's a walk-off right there.
That's all.
I do have the Eagles Express move I can pull out.
I understand wanting to go through all this, but it's,
If it was taken off the agenda and declared new, that's a different thing. I'm just going off what the agenda is here.
I do have a question for you though, before you walk away. This may be actually something for Jared as opposed to you. But you guys refer to an application that was completed from October 26, 2022. I don't have a copy of that. So I just wondered if you guys can give us a copy of this application. This is on page, I think it's the second page. No, sorry, page 6. Last paragraph on page 6.
This ordinance.
No, I'm sorry, your CD. Your condition. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I don't have that answer. I'd be happy to look at that and get some information there.
It could have been at the time we made our initial draft that we had that application as of that day. When the power went out the other day and we met on the 22nd, I
Yeah.
actually have an application for that date filled out and a check. And the only reason it's not in is because
What does the application look like? Can I see? Just hold it up.
the conditional use permit
all right.
application.
All right.
So I have that, I had it then, the power went out, Crystal went home early.
Is that the
Um,
one dated, is that dated October 26th or was that dated December 22nd?
No, it's dated the December 22nd.
Okay,
So, but I think in the drafting,
got it.
we had one and then we updated it.
Got it. I understand.
I need to look at it closer to make sure. But with the confusion with the power and then Crystal being gone on vacation, I've just had this and I'm ready to turn it in. I've been ready for quite some time.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that date that was in there, but I get it now.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Aiken, please.
From what?
I have a
From Mr.
question,
Higgins?
yeah.
Okay.
What's your position on the time frame that a member of the public has to appeal? Is it 15 days from the 22nd or 15 days from when it was published on the public notice? What's the?
I don't remember the term of art, but there's a date of decision or determination based on the reading there. The ordinance would be the date that the zoning administrator decides.
Even though the public has not noticed, any notice of that date until the hearing?
I think that's very problematic, that the ordinance can be clarified moving forward. We've got to deal with what we have right now and be more appropriate to say 15-day appeal period would run from the date that notice is issued. The concern that we have here is there's times the notice, and I'm familiar with Mr. Ruggles and his conditional use permit. I went through the list. I didn't see his conditional use permit out there. So there seems to be different instances where these notices aren't going out. So that in that type of error, inadvertent notice not going out, 15-day period never runs. So the date of determination would be more appropriate because we have a finite date to run through.
So then it makes it, if public doesn't know and then it's published the day after the 15 days, the public should settle like that from your position.
The ordinance could have that strict application, yes. And I would say that would be unfortunate. The other comment on, and to go back to that ombudsman opinion that I submitted, the applicant, as it's approved, there, it is deemed, if it's a complete application, it's done properly, it's submitted, and it's approved by, I would say the land use authority, zoning administrator here, it's deemed approved. So if we go back and say the notice didn't issue, I would say the law says if the application was submitted completely and there's a determination, even if there's a defective action or inaction on behalf of the town to get that done, it is still deemed an appropriate determination, in this case, approval of the conditional use permit. But that's probably a whole other conversation as we're looking at this. So long answer to that question. Very appropriate. Nothing further.
Really, you want your phone to point to this because yes, I'm gonna walk off the stage. Oh, I thought we were done. Okay. Okay.
One more, Lauren Campbell from Virgin. I just have a couple concerns that I urge the town council into looking into. One is on the height. Joe mentioned it earlier, but I found a reference earlier in the municipal code about bonus height going to 30 feet, which I believe was how the hotel was approved previously. But there's no definition of what bonus height is in the town code. And when I looked at other references, it shows that there was a proposed ordinance earlier this year, I think it was in July, where they did have a definition of planning of bonus height. And I'll just read you what they said as that proposed ordinance, because I think that's the best reference we have. It said, an extra 5 feet bonus height is granted during a design review by the planning commission at a regularly scheduled meeting with the recommendation of the town council and the council's approval. A design review should include the overall topography of the land, the average height of the surrounding buildings, potential impacts, and any mitigations proposed. I don't believe any of those things were done. And I would urge the town council to consider that when they're deciding whether they're going to appeal this. The second thing is if the application wasn't filed and the fee paid, it wasn't filed. It's not a perfected application. And I urge the town council to consider that in approving the appeal. The last thing is the CUP itself. If I had to guess, I would say it was written by the developer. Because all the language in that CUP is extreme, it's not in the town's interest at all. When you're giving unconditional vested interest to the developer and gives the town no rights to make modifications or interference by the town in completing the project, that's insulting. And I think that was just a poor, very poor language that was done in the CUP, and it needs to be revisited. So I urge the town council to vote in favor of an appeal.
Sorry, somebody raised their thumb, so I just laughed. Okay. Okay, if there's no further comments from the public, then we are still back to where I'm trying to decide what we should do if we have a member of the public who says they're going to appeal. Then is there any need for us to vote to appeal? Because if we vote to appeal, it goes to the appeal authority. Under Heath's recommendations, legal advice. So,
That's starting to turn off the lights.
yeah, I know, it's like hurry, it wants to be an adjourn.
Well, to get this going, so
Yes.
it can go one way or another. I make a motion that the town appeal based upon the public comments tonight, and it be filed by the mayor before 5 o'clock tomorrow, if we do not receive an appeal from a member of the public before 3 o'clock.
And want to clarify the motion that also that the appeal be assigned to the appeal authority.
Yes, and yes, I'm sorry, yeah, if it's received from the public, it will go to the town council. If we have to file, it will go through to a separate appeal authority. Thank you.
I second the motion. And make sure I really understood. Yes.
We probably should discuss it because you're not gonna vote on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And what about Paul?
Same.
Neither one of us.
Same.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying earlier when you told us to recuse. I thought you were talking about if there was an appeal. You were talking about tonight, voting tonight. Okay, I misunderstood that. Okay.
Because you're voting to appeal. Motions to appeal, they show some conditions.
Why was the mayor excluded, just from my understanding again, from voting? I understand why Jeannie is,
Mayor wrote the ordinance.
but we're not voting on the ordinance.
I agree with that. And she's already indicated her intent.
He's saying that the ordinance shows that where I would.
Based on bias.
Clearly, they just need to avoid.
No,
appearance.
no problem. I'm in agreement with you.
Sorry.
Okay, I guess that motion will fail for a second, so what's the next motion? if I can't, if I am recused and Jean is recused, then it is up to you three.
Yes. Leroy got the motion. All, maybe there's all. I move that we decline ordinance 2023-02.
No, we're not voting, we're not even addressing that.
Okay.
It's like off the table.
So do you want a motion to remove it from the
Sure,
agenda?
sure.
completely?
Um,
Okay, I
oh, wait.
motion
A motion to remove what?
this ordinance that we were going to vote on, that's listed for a vote on our agenda.
I don't, point of order, unless somebody makes a motion to have it approved or not
That it just
approved.
dies, we don't need
It
to
just
vote.
dies. Yeah.
Okay,
So we're gonna be waiting.
So I would make a motion that we make sure the offices are available for somebody to file an appeal, a member of the public to file an appeal if they so desire by 5 o'clock tomorrow. So that we place a phone number or something that they can reach, so the person has an opportunity to carry out that.
right, so I need to ask our clerk, who would you really want to look it off? How would you like that process to go?
We make a motion that we has to be filed on the next business.
It's got to be done tomorrow.
Has to be done tomorrow.
Has to be done
By tomorrow at
So would
5
you like
o'clock,
us to-
if somebody wants to file.
Would you
So
like them to call you?
Well, I've been working after the office, if anybody wants to, but tomorrow, okay, so, thank you. Yes, just call me. I will meet you at the office, just call. Just call. If anybody wants to appeal, just call me, I'll meet you. I have a date with my husband in a movie, but I will work around.
Okay, you gotta make that motion.
I made it, I'm ready for a second.
I'll say.
You can leave the meeting.
Okay, I was gonna say, I could at least call.
You're in charge.
I could still call for the vote.
Leroy can chair.
Okay, no, that's okay. I'll Misty.
Wait, okay, we're voting to, yes.
Yes.
Fine.
Okay,
Thank you,
Allows for
Crystal.
due process.
yes. Okay, so, I guess, a motion, Leroy, make the motion.
I move that we close the meeting.
You want to make a comment? Okay. All right, sorry. He wants to make it sound.
Sorry.
Withdraw your motion.
It died for no seconds.
Oh.
Just, it's super brief. I just want to make sure it's on the record, the town knows. Unicode is updated with the exception.
Hey, quiet.
Almost.
The meeting is not quite done.
I just want on the record that Unicode is up to date as of December 30th with all ordinances except for 2021-75, which has a bunch of errors in it and must not have been vetted after the meeting. There's sentences that aren't complete, but it has signatures on everything. And I can't enter that in because it's just dead end sentences. It doesn't reference anything.
So is
So I
that,
left that to be reviewed by meeting notes and minutes and all that.
okay, I was just about to ask, is that something that we need to bring back up?
I don't think
If the ordinance was clearly written.
No, because the motions were all made, they just.
Yeah, it just it wasn't written correctly. Probably the town council said, yeah, we want these, you know, this, fix this ordinance and so on. So, just so you know, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, all right, Leroy,
I move that the meeting was closed.
you be adjourned, okay?
Second.
Okay, I motion to adjourn. A second is motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor, aye.